What if everything in this world, the things you see on TV, people you encounter in the store, people that you work with, the people that's been in your life, your family, your friends, your foes, your enemies, people that come your way and you do a good deed, the people that come your way and they do something bad to you. What if all these things are just a part of our world? Like it's just you. And everything else is what you have created in your own world to help you get to the other side. And when you get to the other side, all of this cease. All of it cease. All of it cease. All of it ends. So, saying that to say, if you're here now, right, you had a loved one or somebody pass away, you hold on to the memories and the thoughts and you're thinking about them, those are just things that you created in your own mind. They're not even real. Those are people and situations and circumstances that you created to help you develop your heart, to help you develop your mind, to help you develop, everything that you are to be. That would be interesting. I can't even talk. That would be amazing. Because that means you can really bring to you what you want to you. You can really release what you want to release. And you really can be whatever it is you want to be. Because what if this was all a dream, but when we die, that's when we wake up? What? I know what it is.
Oh my God. No puedo creer.
Open YouTube.
Here's YouTube.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, open it. No. I'll get you. Go ahead. YouTube.
Here's YouTube.
EBKJ-Bo. X-rated.
I was gonna wait.
Open YouTube app.
Here's YouTube.
Not that it erases itself.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think so. What happened to it? Thought it was there we are. And we're back. YouTube's in full effect.
Some Indians came directly from India. Many are descendants of indentured laborers. Alright? Many are descendants of indentured laborers. Alright? Look at that. It says East Indian immigration, Guyana. Alright? East Indian indentured immigrants in Guyana. As you go. Again, these are the so-called Chinos. They were labeling Indian in Mexico. Yeah. Soak it all in. Empty your cup. Break the spell. It says here, Indian slaves, indentured laborers for British profit, and again Trinidad and Tobago influence tens of thousands of Indians, right? Hindus. Tens of thousands of Hindus. Hindus. Some more coolies. Some more coolies in the West Indies. Alright? You see, so-called black people, so-called Negro, alright? And I thought this was cool. Some images of Buddhas, statues and everything, and other. As you can see, it's all over the place. Who's the original Asians? When we're talking about bringing Chinos over here in the 1500s and 1600s, remember the book told us they were coming from the Indian subcontinent. From the Indian subcontinent. Look at these murals right here. Oh, look at this statue. They try to wipe off, look at that. They try to scrape off the complexion. Look at this as well. Wow, look at that. Almost look like the Ethiopian and Russian icons, right? And then you got Buddha. Some more images right here. As you can see. And as you can see, it's all over the place. They know who the original people are. They made the pottery and ceramic statues themselves. They know why they depict this guy so dark skinned. Here goes. I don't know if that's Buddha or another Indian subcontinent mural. So-called black person. Alright? Another one right here. As you can see,
United States.
if you can see the
Until we got to
diversity,
Montana.
look at the
Government has
diversity.
decided not
Look at
to
his
shoot.
complexion. He's a little greener. He's a little greener. I don't know if that's just from fading, but as you can see, he's lighter. There's light-skinned people out here and there's dark-skinned people together. Look at this. Isn't this cool? Wow. Tibetan Buddha with a conical hat. Some more murals right here, as you can see. Polynesians. Why do Polynesians look so different today? Hey, I didn't write that. All right. Why do Polynesians look so different today? These are Polynesians. These people look more so-called African than the actual Khoisan, one of the oldest Africans, just something to think about. And these people do not trace back to Africa.
Thank you so much for
The difficulty of identifying Catarina's birthplace points to a broader methodological problem from the study of Chino slaves. Slave deeds only rarely specify the individual's origin. One example is a slave named Antonio de Silva, who was identified as a Creole from Goa. Instead, most slave deeds simply stated where the slave was last purchased, usually in Manila, with no reference to the person's birthplace. Alright, so a lot of these people, again, you guys paying attention, is that they were coming from these other islands, Papua New Guinea, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, the Maluku Islands, Borneo, Bali, India, because their last place of record was in Manila or the Philippines. That's where people jotted them down as being born in Manila, Filipinos, right? Our understanding of Chino slaves' varied origins is therefore obscured by the surviving documentation, which suggests that many of them were from Manila, which they weren't. The hagiographies about Catarina are all the more important than for what they tell us about people's different paths to the Manila slave market. The description of Catarina's capture exposes the Portuguese as having taken an active role in enslaving people, alright? These Portuguese Sephardic Moorish people, yes, they had an active role in this. When she was about 9 years old, some Portuguese men came upon her on the beach where she was playing with other children. The men took them hostage and then sailed to a distant place where, assured that no one would take away their prey, leap on shore and disembark the stolen prisoners and goods. Based on her own experience, it is understandable that Catarina thought that all the Portuguese in Asia sailed the seas and lands in the condemnable pirating of goods and people. Right here we have a deep sheepdog, Brahma, from India. Again, from southern India. Again, this pig is from that book I showed you guys earlier, Caste and Tribes of Southern India. This is another, a man from there. You guys can see so-called Negro. Alright.
Sometimes it can feel like there's no way out of treatment-resistant depression. You take one antidepressant after another, and they aren't working for you. It's like you're going in circles. Turn to a different choice. Spravato is the first FDA-approved nasal spray taken with an oral antidepressant for adults with treatment-resistant depression. Spravato works differently. Spravato can cause sleepiness, feeling disconnected from yourself, your thoughts, space and time, dizziness, fainting, spinning sensation, and anxiety. So it's taken under the supervision of a healthcare provider who will monitor you for at least 2 hours after taking Spravato. Don't drive, operate machinery, or perform activities that require full alertness until the next day after a restful sleep. Spravato doesn't prevent suicide, reduce suicidal thoughts or actions, or replace hospitalization if needed. Call your doctor right away about unusual changes in behavior, worsening depression, or thoughts of suicide. Antidepressants may increase suicidal thoughts and actions in people 24 and younger. Spravato is not for use in children. There's a risk for abuse and misuse. Don't take if you have a blood vessel disease, an abnormal connection between your veins and arteries, a history of bleeding in the brain, are pregnant or may become pregnant. Spravato is not for use as a medicine to prevent or relieve pain. Spravato may cause serious side effects such as increased blood pressure, problems thinking clearly, or bladder problems. And if you have depression symptoms, you may begin to feel like yourself again. Ask your doctor about Spravato.
Where is here?
Everybody ought to see here. eBay Motors has the right parts at the right prices. See the headlights and the bumper. At least you can skip the car wash. For parts that fit your vehicle, look for the green check. That's right.
Yeah.
Don't think I'm making this up, showing you Africans.
That's where it's at.
Again, Digitar, right? Digitar is for Piratas, a non-Arabic shape of common servitor community of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, I looked at that temple there in Tamil Nadu that was built by his ancient ancestors. That's who built that. Who are based mainly in the town of Chidambaram. He's from Chidambaram. They are an exclusive group of Brahmins learned in the Vedas and Jagnas. This is a Brahmin sacrifices who also serve as the hereditary of the Nataraja temple in Chidambara. Alright? He is the hereditary. These are his people who built this temple. Alright? Who built this pyramid? Who taught them? Who's the Maya? Did they go over to India and become the Nagas? Who built this? They credit most of these temples to the Nagas. Alright? You guys read all that history, right? That's his people who built that temple. His people. They're the guardians of it. Today, probably still. But again, break the spells. This is a Hindu. When he would have been called a Chino. We read that earlier. He would have been called a Chino. He would have been grouped together. They would have all been grouped together. All these diverse cultures as Chinos. Here we have some more Dayak warriors from Borneo. Remember we saw some earlier? With the turban on and the feathers looking like the Seminole hats. Remember? These are from Borneo. Again, Dayak warriors. You guys can see Dayak warriors, Borneo. And right here we have an East Indian basket seller. She is in America, South America, I believe Trinidad, somewhere there. So again, this is a coolie, she would be referred to, as you guys can see, so-called Negro, woman or girl. Alright, this is a Hindu, making baskets and selling them for a living. Right here we have another East Indian family in America, I believe this is Trinidad, or Guyana, or actually Suriname. I did find a lot of them from Suriname, one of those three places. And I just want you to look, how they look. And again, these are Hindu East Indians. They were being referred to as Chinos in the 1500s, 1600s. Look at her, with her gear, her man, I guess. Right? And then her. Here we have another East Indian woman. This is from Trinidad. Alright? Trinidad and Tobago. Take a good look at her. This was an old and very small pictures. I had to fix it up a little bit and make it bigger so it looks a little pixelated. But look at her earring coming to her nose. The picture's not too good. And right here we have some more East Indians or Hindus, aka coolies. And this is in Guyana in South America. Guyana, South America. These are East Indians in Guyana. East Indians in Guyana. Again, these people would have been called Chinos back in the 1500s, 1600s when they were bringing them in from Manila. Right here we have a father and son from the Tanimbar region of the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. Alright, father and son. And he got a turban on. We got some more Fijis here from 1881. The VT Levu Highlands, the Fiji Islands, indigenous people from there, so-called Negro. And again, these are not from Africa. They don't descend from Africa just because they look like this. You guys gotta stop that and stop giving opinions and believing everything they told you in school without doing proper research or proper genealogy. Another Fiji Islander, as you guys can see. Sometimes they rock their hair like that too. But you can see a descendant of the ancient Fiji people right here. Right here we have another Fiji Island native. Again, these are old pics and colorized, so these are very old. Just look at how he's rocking his hair. Like I told you guys, that was part of their culture. That was part of their culture. Right here we have some Fiji Island women dressed up, but again, these are women from the Fiji Islands, alright? So-called Negro women. Some more Fiji Islanders. Again, colorized, these are very old pictures. I was able to find. Look at his hair, how he's rocking it perfectly. Look at him. He got it styled up like spikes and stuff. Like, nice. I told you this is part of their culture. Another Fiji man here. Alright, so man with his staff or horn or instrument or weapon. I don't know, I haven't done the research. Look at his hair, how he styled it. Nice. These are feathers, I believe, coming up from feathers. Alright, rocking the feathers, what does that tell you? Where's the connection to Amaruka? Another Fiji man, it says here Fiji warrior. They get creative on their own and make their own jewelry and everything. Alright, look at his phenotype and his hair. Again, from Fiji Islands. These are the people they were grabbing from the Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent, as we read earlier. And they were grouping together as Chinos, classifying them as Chinos, and eventually many as Indians. This is another Fiji woman. Alright. before, in the Rua province. Alright? Laborers, Fijian men, laborers. Take a good look at them, how they look. Right? Look at that. Ancient people of Fiji. And right here we have a Hindu girl, right? A girl from India, right? An Indian, a Hindu. Look at her. So swarthy. She looks like a lot of the North American women I grew up seeing in Boston and everything. You know, what is the difference? You know, what is the connection here with the ancient Nagas and the Mayas? What is the connection with the Amarukans and the Nagas? Here we got a girl in Ceylon, Sri Lanka. Remember Sri Lanka, that's under Indian, so that's why she may look a little Hindu. She might also be from India and being brought to Ceylon as a servant, but this is what Ceylon people look like too. Alright, so real quick, we return now to the book, Asian Slaves in Colonial Mexico, from Chinos to Indians. Okay, you guys starting to understand who they're really talking about? Remember, we're talking about the 1500s and 1600s, Southeast Asia, Maluku Islands, the Philippines, India, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, Papua New Guinea. We're gonna learn something bigger. Scout rogue. Live the life you promised yourself.
Are you tired of the repetitive nucleic acid purification experiments? With the groundbreaking time saver, the T-Guide S16, now it only takes 3 steps to purify nucleic acid. Specifically tailored to research application, the T-Guide S16 combines a pre-installed program with easy-to-use design to achieve out-of-the-box automation. With the supporting magnetic bead-based reagent kits, it can purify nucleic acid of high yield and purity from various samples automatically. This compact extractor occupies less space than a piece of A4 paper, extracts nucleic acid clean and fast, and creates an overall comfortable user experience. As the 5th generation of the T-Guide extractor series, T-Guide S16 has unique advantages in advanced techniques, reliable supporting reagent kits, and optimal design, leading the automated nucleic acid extraction solution to make purification easier for life science laboratories. The free trial program is launched in US region. Apply now to try out smart purification.
I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 2 real quick. Alright, it says here chapter 2, the diversity and reach of the Manila slave market. The story of the people who journeyed from the Philippines to Mexico begins in 1565. 1500s, guys, when Miguel Lopez de Legazpi finally realized Spain's long-standing ambition of establishing a colony in Asia. Geronimo Pacheco, originally from the Eastern Islands and a native of Bengal, alright, this guy, a native of Bengal, he's Hindu, accompanied Legazpi on his founding voyage. So this guy's kind of helping the Portuguese, right? Pacheco had been made to travel from Bengal to Portugal and across the Atlantic to Mexico, where he was assigned the task of following the religious and people going to the Occidental islands. They needed an interpreter who was native of those islands, you see? So he was with them, this guy. His journey with Legazpi was a harbinger of what came afterwards. The forced migration of enslaved people from Asia to America, who crossed the Pacific Ocean in the service of European masters. The foundation of the Spanish Philippines gave rise to the Trans-Pacific slave trade. Trans-Pacific, it's not transatlantic. I think it was actually more from this side, especially early on, the 1500s, 1600s, guys, that they were actually bringing these so-called other Negroes, or so-called Indians. Remember, they were eventually becoming Indians. The slave trade began soon after conquest, and with considerable controversy. In 1570, Don Martin Enriquez de Almanza, the viceroy of New Spain, ordered the return of 50 Philippine slaves who had recently arrived from the Philippines. In his words, it was unwise for the natives of the Philippines to think that we consent to their ill treatment. Filipino Indians could potentially rebel against Spanish sovereignty if they realized that the colonists planned to sell them into slavery and ship them into Mexico. Alright, there's footnotes here, there's a lot of sources for this. In addition, the viceroy feared that the few slaves who were Muslims or Moros, look at that, Moors, would dogmatize their sect among the Indians of Mexico and endanger the missionary project. The viceroy's efforts to discourage this commerce were in vain. Slaves purchased in Manila were sent to Mexico throughout the 17th century, 1600s, throughout the whole 1600 years, right? And then they were doing it in the 1500s too, so that's 200 years, right? And look at this. This book is going to tell you, and this is what I've been trying to show you guys this whole time, even on part one, but I didn't really emphasize it. I want to show you guys that this book is literally telling you where these people were taken from. You guys got to pay attention, all right? It says birthplace mentioned in this book: the Ambon, Borneo, Java, Makassar, the Maluku Islands, Indonesia, Bengal is India, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, India, and some Japan. We did see some Ainu, right? The Macau, China, Malacca, Malay, Malaysians, Muslim Philippines, Jolo, Mindanao, Zamboanga, Spanish Philippines, Cagayan, Calamian, Kamarin, Cavite. I showed you guys all these islands. Alright, so we got Borneo right here, right? Maluku Islands. Alright, here's Telek Ambon. The Ambon is the Maluku Islands, right? They just showed us Maluku, as you guys can see. Maluku Islands. Right, this is where they were grabbing from. Sri Lanka, Ceylon, Borneo, Bali, Java. Java down here. Java, Bali. Alright, Sumba, Timor Island, Malaysia, right? Malaysia, Sumatra, Sri Lanka, and India, right? That's where they're grabbing these people from. They're not from up here. They're not all mostly Chinos or up here Koreans or anything like that, right? They were coming down here first, down here, and grabbing people. These are all so-called Negro people, Negroes. Get it in your head, Negroes that they were bringing over to Mexico and the Americas and calling them Chinos. And eventually a lot of these people became classified as Indians or Indios over in America, becoming mixed and confused with the actual Indios or indigenous Indians of America. Alright, so the book is clearly telling us where they're grabbing these people from. You guys gotta pay attention to that. Alright, these are all Negro people, black folks. And there's a map of what I just showed you. Borneo, Brunei, look at the Philippines, Maluku Islands, Timor, Macau. These are just some of the regions they mentioned, but they were grabbing people from all over, even the white regions here. All of that. I got pictures from all these places. Chino slave origins. Pay attention. Chino slave origins. These are not Chinos how we think Chinos. These are so-called Negroes. Chino slave origins. To think that Asians look a certain way and that the word Chino is supposed to look a certain way, maybe in modern times, but not in the 1500s and 1600s, alright? Again, Chino slave origins. These places right here that was filled with so-called Negro people they were bringing to the Americas. These weren't Africans they were bringing, these slave trades. They were coming from Asia, actually. A whole history that wasn't told to us in our school systems. Shame on you, teachers, for teaching wrong history if you're still doing it. Say something. Speak up. Change the curriculums. Stop teaching lies to the children. And again, that figure of the map says Chino slave origins map prepared by Eric Johnson, American Spatial Data Services Library, Miami University. They did the research. You guys gotta understand, this is real history. This is a Southeast Asian woman as well. Alright? Might be from Sumatra, Sri Lanka, not sure. I wasn't able to get a location, but she was very, very swarthy. So-called China, right? So-called China. Here we have Southeast Asians from Papua New Guinea. If they were doing some fishing or going to fish, coming back from fishing, you know, in a boat, not sure what they're doing in the picture, but as you guys can see, Alright, woolly hair, swarthy complexions, so-called Negroes. Here we have a South Pacific Asian man, another one right here. Not sure of the country, but yeah, I thought it was cool when I colorized it. I was like, yup, swarthy, so swarthy. Here we have South Pacific Asian women, some more, and these are some of the ones that I didn't know the regions. We just know they were from Asia. Again, they don't show us these type of people when we think of Asians. And to me, these are so-called Negro women. And these are your Chinas or Chinos when they were enslaving them and bringing them to the Americas. That's what they were classifying them as. Here we have a South Pacific Asian man, another one. You guys can see, so swarthy. Alright, I believe this is from the Philippines, if I remember correctly. Here we have a Tamil girl from India wearing an upper body tunic over a sari, 1912. Alright, a Tamil girl from India. Take a good look at her. Tamil girl, a Hindu girl. Remember the story of Katarina? She was brought to Mexico. She was a Hindu. Alright, what if she looked like her? Here we have another Tamil woman. Alright, Tamil woman. Look at her jewelry, her headgear. Back up a little bit. She is definitely swarthy. What we say, copper colored. Tamil beauty, right? Tamil beauty, it says here, Tamil India. A tiny race man with ivory imported from Sumatra. Maluku Islands, Indonesia. Alright, he's an Indonesian from the Maluku Islands. Look how interesting he looks. Here we have the head of the Molo with his entourage visiting the post holder of Babao Timor. Alright, Southeast Asians, alright, so swarthy. The head of the Molo, the Sultanate of Gorontalo, which was originally known as the Kingdom of Gorontalo, is one of the oldest and most influential kingdoms in the northern peninsula, Sulawesi Island, Indonesia. One of the oldest kingdoms. Who these people represent? One of the oldest kingdoms in Indonesia. Look at that, so swarthy. Indigenous people, one of the oldest kingdoms, as it says there. Continues, says this chapter is about the Manila slave market and the indigenous Filipinos, Muslim war captives, and other people who were sold there. It is a starting point for understanding the origins and ancestry of Chino slaves who lived in Mexico. Manila was a slave society during the 17th century, right? 1600s. Slaves did the majority of the labor, and master-slave relations shaped the general social order. Within years after the Spanish conquest, the bustling port city had some 40,000 residents of diverse origins. A full quarter of this population was enslaved. They were craftspeople, manual laborers, and servants who upheld their masters' social stature. By the 1620s, the city had 8,000 indigenous slaves and 2,000 foreign slaves, in addition to an untold number of Muslim slaves. The whole of the city was a slave market, supplying labor to Spanish colonists and indigenous elites. Even their own people were enslaved them. Slave auctions were held in the plazas found within the city's walls. Alright, they never showed us none. They never told us. They always wanted us to think this was happening in West Africa, when it really wasn't that much. It was really happening over here and in Europe. And masters also sold slaves through individual transactions. The unorganized nature of the market makes it nearly impossible to quantify the volume of sales, but it is clear that Manila was an emporium for slaves. Masters from throughout the Spanish Philippines knew to come to the capital to secure chattel property. Philippines, right? We saw so many Philippines and all the people that were being brought to the Philippines so far already in these pictures. All the same people they're talking about here. This is the same people that were bringing to the Philippines, Manila. All those pictures I just showed you guys, right? Don't get lost. This is the same people they're talking about. They were bringing to the Americas, and so-called Chinos. See, says here, girls dressed for the harvest or New Year's party in honor of the ghost. Headdress on forehead in the shape of the moon or orange. This is from Indonesia. Alright, these are Indonesians. Check it out. Alright, again, not Africans, and these are the people, as they were mentioned in the book, a lot of their people were being enslaved, okay, brought to Mexico. Right here we got some Golas, some low-caste Hindu tribe in the Rajputana region of India. Indonesia. Papua New Guinea headhunter, huh? Zoom in a little bit, right? This is what he looks like. Look at the feathered crown, right? And then look what he's carrying here. It looks like he has an actual head. An actual head. Look at that. A headhunter from Papua New Guinea. Could that be a real head? Most likely. Right here we have a Hindu elderly woman from India. Alright? Just look at her. Look like a lot of people's grandma to me. We got here Sakuna. That's her name, Sakuna. The British West Indies. She is in Suriname, I believe I got this picture. From a coolie Hindu woman. Alright, named Sakunov. Sakunov. It says here we have a Hindu man and a child in Suriname, South America. He's blind, a blind Hindu beggar, I believe it says, when I translated it in a child. Again, this is in Suriname. These are Hindus, Indian people from Hindustan, living in Suriname. Got another Hindu woman right here. Again, I was able to find a lot of these pictures so you guys can see when they're talking about they're bringing Hindus or Indian or people from Manila. And again, I'm reminded of Catarina's story we read earlier, how she was taken from India and she became a saint in Puebla, Mexico. Alright, she was referred to as China, but she was from India. And again, another Hindu woman, young woman, named Unobia. Her name is Unobia. She's in Suriname, South America, okay? I want you guys to be real about this. Now, if you look at her, now you put her in Arawak clothing, you wouldn't be able to know. You'd say, yeah, that's an Arawak. That's for sure an Arawak. But this is a Hindu. Now, is there a connection with the Arawak Karen people and her? Maybe. Anciently. So my point is that we just got to leave things open. That it may not always be just American indigenous blood when we find people in South America that look like her. Another Hindu woman, as you guys can see here, very swarthy. Alright, look at the gear. I believe this was one of the wives of an emperor. He had a couple of wives that were shown in the pics. This was one of them. And
It's not always easy to deal with difficult emotions, and while quick fixes can seem less daunting than facing how you feel, some short-term distractions, like marijuana, can actually increase feelings of stress, anxiety, and depression, which is why building healthy habits, like moving around, practicing gratitude, or connecting with others are better for your mental health. And if you need it, help us out there.
And here we have a Igorot warrior, headhunter of the Philippine Cordilleras. Okay? Igorot warrior, the Igorot tribal people, headhunters of the Philippines. Here's a Filipino smoking up from his pipe, chilling, with his turban on. Here's a picture I found that was either from South America or the Caribbean, can't remember, but these were immigrants from India, as they're labeling them here. This is in America, they call them immigrants, as you guys can see. These are all swarthy people, very swarthy Hindus, alright, with their turbans on. Alright, so immigrants from India that were forgotten. We got another Hindu or Indian girl spinning silk. Look, using her legs and her hands. This is a skill, this is an art. And look at her. It's when you guys really look at what she looks like. And again, her people in the 1500s, 1600s were being taken, enslaved, and being brought to America and being labeled as Chinos and Indios. Alright, and here we have an indigenous couple from New Caledonia Island in the South Pacific. New Caledonia. But again, New Caledonia, where is it again? Right near Fiji, under the Solomon Islands, on the east side of Australia, way over here, Caledonia, right? New Caledonians, that's what they look like, right? So-called Negro people. Again, same people they were grabbing in the 1500s, 1600s, these Sephardic, Moorish, Jewish pirates, right? These were black folks that were doing this. These Spanish and Portuguese merchants, they were enslaving these people and bringing them to the Americas, okay? And we're back in the book Asian Slaves in colonial Mexico, from Chinos to Indians, Tatiana Sejas, alright? And it says here the Portuguese slave trade in the Indian Ocean world. A remote political event in Europe. Explain coffins of Portuguese slave traders. Who's these Portuguese? Let's not forget these are so-called Negro people, so-called black Portuguese. A lot of them Sephardic, Jewish, Moorish, Muslim, pirates, crypto new Christians, crypto Jews, crypto Muslims. Again, Portuguese slave traders in the Philippines and the corresponding presence of foreign slaves in the Manila market in 1578, all the way back in the 1500s, as Portugal suffered a succession crisis when King Sebastian I died without an heir. Philip II of Spain took this opportunity to invade the country and seize the Portuguese crown. During the period of Iberian Union or Spanish captivity, 1580 to 1640, the Spanish king ruled two empires with separate governmental structures. The Treaty of Tomar, 1581, expressly prohibited trade between the colonies of Spain and Portugal, but commercial links were nonetheless established between the Estado, the India, and the Philippines. Portuguese traders claimed that as vassals of the Spanish king, it was just for them to trade and contract in Manila. Having previously engaged in raiding for slaves in various islands of the Philippines archipelago, the Portuguese were eager to change the nature of their visits and enter the market as lawful traders. During this period of some 60 years, the Portuguese arrived in Manila with the monsoon winds, bringing slaves from the Moluccas, again, from where? Moluccas and Malacca in India. Malacca, Maluku Islands, the Maluku Islands, the Malacca people. I showed you so swarthy, woolly hair, Afro, whatever you want to call it. They're not Africans, and these are the people that Sephardic, Moorish, Portuguese, Jews, and Muslims were enslaving, raiding, and bringing to the Americas. They're telling you right here, Moluccas and Malacca. They give you specific places. Go look at the people that were there. I'm already showing you pictures from the 1800s. Imagine 300 years later. So imagine what they looked like in 1500s, 1600s, right? 300 years before. The organization of this trade, which resulted in the influx of slaves from regions far beyond the Philippines archipelago, accounts for the great diversity of the Manila slave market. Alright? Influx of slaves from regions far beyond the Philippines. I showed you all these islands and they were grabbing these people, bringing them to the Philippine Manila slave market. Alright, continue. We have here an indigenous man from Mindanao, Philippines. The Mindanao Moors, as they were calling them, the Mindanao Filipino Moors, as they were calling them, as you guys can see. This was a great picture I found. This was an Indonesian woman. You know, some part of Indonesia. Remember, Indonesia's big, a lot of islands and stuff. And when I saw this in black and white, I was like, she looks like she's swarthy. So I colorized it, and this is what we got. Alright? Look at that. Wow. Another man from Indonesia. Archipelago, remember, there's a lot of islands. You're going to find different phenotypes with different looks throughout the Indonesian archipelago. I'm not sure what he has in his mouth, but you know, this is a picture I found in colorized Indonesian man. Okay, Elsewhere in Manila, the Portuguese offered a variety of goods in exchange for silver, including munitions, equipment for shipping, and other metalware, cotton textiles from India, and spices. Slaves, however, were their singular most profitable commodity. Slaves was where the money was at. Contemporaries took special notice of the ships that regularly left Goa for Manila and condemned the many offenses to God that were committed on these slaving vessels. Alright, all these slave narratives talking about Kunta Kinte. Alex Haley lied. He was talking about what was going on to the Asians and the Europeans they would bring. Remember, let's not forget the other slaves too. All these unwanted, undesirable Europeans. Check out my previous videos. And now we see that in Asia there was a large quantity of these people being brought to the Americas too. So there's two major places they were bringing foreign labor, apart from the local indigenous Americans they were enslaving, right? We got that too first. Gotta clear everything up. There was already people here. They didn't need to bring so many people. They already had people in here in Americas. When they needed more people though, they wanted to keep colonizing though, they brought others from Europe and Asia, not Africa, not as much as they told us. So many offenses happened in these slaving vessels. In this sense, the influx of American silver escalated Portuguese slave trading in Manila, as it prompted Portuguese traders to increase the number of sails they brought up to the Spanish capital to exchange for silver. The Portuguese, moreover, increased their trading activities because Manila had a great demand for slaves. Korewa tribal group says Aboriginal from the Chota Nagpur area of India. Alright, these are Hindus, alright? Indians, Hindus. Alright, these people, they're not from Africa just because they're dark skinned. Hope you guys starting to understand this major point. You gotta break those misconceptions. This is a Japanese dancer with a bow and arrow. It says Mankunagara Kradon Surakarta. A Japanese dancer with a bow and arrow. Alright, you guys can see. So Swarti, so-called Negro, Japanese indigenous person. Here we have a Mina woman from the Mina people, the Mina tribe in India, a Hindu. She has very dark complexion, looking like the Black Marys, right? Like the Black Mary statues in all these churches, Catholic churches all throughout Latin America and many other countries as well. They're showing the Black Madonna, looking like the Black Madonna. But this is a Mina woman from India, Hindu, a Hindu, and these are the people they were bringing in the 1500s, 1600s and calling chinos. Here we have men in warrior clothes at La Mawolo on South Solor. This is 1929, Indonesia, Indonesian archipelago, the Lama Wolo people. And here, real quick, we have the Lama Wolo region, right? Look at this volcano right here. Wow, Lama Wolo, right here, Lama Wolo. And where's Lama Wolo again? Gonna back up. And Lama Wolo, as you guys can see, backed up is in Indonesia, Lama Wolo. You see? Lama Wolo. Let's go back to the pic. Indonesians from Lama Wolo. Let me show you. Close up. Look at their hair. Alright? Look at him. He don't play. And then look at him. He's chilling. Alright? He's chilling. Here we have a native Sinhalese woman making lace. Old Ceylon postcard. It says here lace making Ceylon. And the postcard. I'm gonna zoom into her so you guys can see. To me, she looks very much like many North American women I see growing up in Boston and different parts of the U.S. You know, what's the difference? Just look at her. You guys be honest with yourselves, right? And she's from Ceylon. She's Sinhalese. This is a Sinhalese indigenous woman. She's not from Africa. This is a postcard from Ceylon. Nayar females from India, Hindu. Alright, very cool image. When I colorize it, I was just like, wow, look at them. Looking like a lot of people again I know in Americas. This is a very cool picture I found here. As soon as I saw it black and white, I was like, oh, I gotta colorize this one. It says newlywed woman in fully party costume. Tanimbar, Maluku Islands. Remember the Maluku Islands, Indonesia. This is an Indonesian woman, original, indigenous woman from the Maluku Islands, the Tanimbar region. was a slave from Mozambique, and his maternal grandparents were slaves from Ternate in the Maluku Islands. Maluku, his grandma. For many years, he worked as a servant of Portuguese soldiers, traveling with them by land and sea to places such as Cochin and Ceylon. And one day in Manila, his employer sold him unjustly into slavery, and he ended up on board the galleon bound for Acapulco. That's in Mexico, all right? That's the one story of this Anton Rosado. Now, very interesting. A lot of you are going to say, "Sí, Crimea, Mozambique, that's Africa." Well, okay, yeah, there was some there from Eastern Africa, not West Africa, as they told us, Eastern some. But as you guys can see, people in the Maluku Islands too. His maternal grandparents were from the Maluku Islands, and these were black folks, so-called Negroes. Stop trying to Africanize everybody. Please stop trying to Africanize everybody. Here we have Moluccas, or Moluccos, the Moluccas people. Remember, the Portuguese were taking whole villages. They were going to the Moluccas natives and taking them and enslaving them. Well, here's your Moluccas. This is the people they were grabbing, bringing to the Americas. So-called Negro people, not Africans. A whole slave trade they left out in history. A whole Middle Passage they really didn't teach us about. We have a Papuan Gulf warrior. A Papuan Gulf warrior in traditional ethnic jewelry, alright? This is an Asian. So-called Chino. Right? So-called Chino. Look at his feather headdress. Alright, what is the connection with that and us here in America? Orang Kuli female, an aboriginal from the Shota Nagpur region of India. We just read. What were they doing to they were carrying whole villages away of people that look like her. People that look like her. Not Hindus how you picture them today. People that look like her. Bring them to the Americas. Whole villages. A major slave trade here that they swept under the rug and they didn't really explain it to us correctly. Here we have Pakoy Alam, the fourth of the Principality of Pakoy Alam from the Jakarta, Central Java. This is from 1870, alright? Javanese, more Swarthy, Javanese indigenous people, and this is royalty, alright? What happened? They don't look like that now. Here we have a Papua New Guinea man. Okay, a Papua New Guinea man. Check out the claw or tooth he has on his hair coming down. Look at that. That's pretty cool. Nice picture. I was able to colorize, showing the color, the grass, the background. He's on some hills or something like that, it appears. Very cool picture, as you guys can see. And these are same people they were bringing to Manila, right? Slave market, bringing to America, classifying them as Chinos. The Portuguese traded slaves as part of their Indies trade system, Comercio de India a India, which stretched from East Africa to Japan. Union says Portuguese traders traveled from port to port, usually starting in Goa and stopping in Malacca, or the Malacu, Macau, Nagasaki, and back again. After 1580, Manila became one more port of call. Portuguese traders would, for example, acquire white and brown sugar, tortoise shell and gold in the Philippines and then take this merchandise to Malacca to exchange for slaves and cloth. They would then continue on to other ports and repeat the pattern of selling and acquiring new commodities along the way. The Indies trade was largely a private venture rather than being part of the royal routes, carretas, that connected India back to Europe. Some Portuguese traders were full-time merchants. Others were soldiers or sailors who were allowed to engage in a little trading on the side as an inducement to work in the far reaches of the Portuguese seaborne empire. One such Portuguese soldier tried to make some profit by bringing a slave from Bengal named Miguel to sell in Manila, but Miguel ran away soon after arriving in the Philippines. For the most part, however, Portuguese traders transported large numbers of slaves and sold them in Manila in lots. Some more Papua New Guinea tribal men here in their village, as you guys can see. Alright, zoom in a little bit. Really good. What we're looking at here, you gotta break the spell. Alright, look at all the people back here, all Swarthy people, indigenous people, and these are not Africans, guys. You gotta break hunters. Well, possibly that is might likely be a head right there. It says in the Torres Strait. You can see Swarty. Alright, I'm zooming to the children right here, so you guys can see. Right? These are the children again. These ain't Africans. These are Papua New Guineans, indigenous people. They've been there thousands and thousands of years. Another Papua New Guinea man. Alright, this is a very cool picture. Have a clear perspective. Use your senses, right? Not everybody that looks like this person is coming out of Africa. Well, slaves traveled far with their Portuguese captors, who acquired chattel in places throughout the Indian Ocean world, not Africa. The Bay of Bengal, for example, was an important source of slaves for the Portuguese. They allied with the king of Arakan to carry out joint slaving expeditions in the early 17th century. The rise of slave raiding in the region of Bengal correlated with Arakanese military expansion, as well as heightened Dutch demands for slave labor. According to French traveler Francois Bernier, the Portuguese entered numerous arms and branches of the Ganges in light galleys and carried away entire villages. Listen, this is not in Africa they were doing this. And these people are not like how the Hindus you picture today. These are so-called Negro people that you would say these are Africans, but they weren't from Africa. And listen to what they were doing, these Portuguese, other Negroes. This is more and more war. Shout out to 432 The Drop Radio Con Drop. Again, these Portuguese entered numerous arms and branches of the Ganges, that river, right, in India, in light galleys and carried away entire villages. This is a whole slave trade they didn't tell us about. They didn't really emphasize, because they wanted everybody to think they were from Africa. These captives were then sold to passing traders who bought whole cargoes at a cheap rate. Whole cargoes of people at a cheap rate. And here we have another Papua New Guinea man. Alright? And what's so cool about them is that they really rock the feathers a lot. They have a lot of the headdresses. As you can see, this person, very swarthy, so-called Negro from Papua New Guinea. Here we have more Papua New Guinea tribal people. I thought it was a cool picture to colorize when I saw it in black and white. Many people would imagine these are Africans if they didn't know, and they just found this image on the internet. They would say, oh, look at these Africans, right? They're not Africans. I'm going to keep emphasizing that. I hope you guys get that clear now. Catch up to my previous videos. We've already debunked the out of Africa theories. Please take the time. Some more Papua New Guinea warriors from the Mandan astrolabe taken around the year 1900s with spears and shields. Alright, I'm zooming right here. You guys can take a look. A Papuan Gulf tribesman. So there's Papua and then there's Papua New Guinea, right? It's split in half. So this is the northern part, Papuan, and this is what they look like as well, the indigenous people there. And remember, this was a black and white picture. This is an older picture, just looks pretty cool. I was able to enhance it and everything. And this is what we get. Here we have people from the Lombok West, Nusa Tenggara, and the Maluku Island region, Indonesian archipelago. Alright, these are the people they never told us about. These are the same people, the Portuguese, these Portuguese slave raiders were bringing to the Americas. These people would eventually be classified as Chinos. We have here a Filipino woman. This is an indigenous Filipino woman. Okay, just take a good look at her. Alright guys, take a really good look at her. Again, she looks like many people I grew up seeing in North America. I don't know, that's just my opinion. So-called Negro woman, right? But this is an indigenous person from the Philippines. Alright, so we're continuing the book Asian Slaves in Colonial Mexico. From Chinos to Indians. Muslim captives and just war slavery. When the Spaniards first arrived, they were astounded to find that Muslims, Spain's traditional enemies, inhabited large parts of the Philippines archipelago. Alright, so the Spanish, the Catholics, when they got there, they were like, man, there's Muslims over here already. Alright? They didn't get there with the Portuguese and the Spanish back. They was already there. The Spaniards' deep-seated animosity toward Muslims, Moors, was harbored during the centuries-long reconquista of the Iberian Peninsula. At the time of contact, Spaniards had only recently taken over the Emirate of Granada, 1492, the last Muslim stronghold. Spanish colonists even posited posited that they were the direct descendants of the Muslims who had been banished from Spain. In reality, merchants and missionaries from Borneo and the Maluku Islands introduced Islam to the region starting in the mid-14th century, alright? 200 years later, most of Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago were fully part of the Islamic world, Dar al-Islam, okay? And Islam had also made significant inroads in the islands of Cebu and Bohol. Alright, so we've been seeing a lot of these pictures today, and you see a lot of these people are Muslim, they have the turbans on and everything. These are the original. These are very swarthy Asiatic Muslims, right? In contrast, people in Luzon and Visayas had only recently begun to convert. Not coincidentally, these were the islands that became the core of the Spanish Philippines. The presence of Islam, in other words, determined Spaniards' missionary and military success. The regions that were fully Islamized never experienced Spanish colonization, but rather remained under the sovereignty of Muslim chiefs who fought Spanish incursions at every turn. The Spaniards engaged in direct conflict with Muslims from circa 1565 to 1663, the so-called Moro Wars or the Moor Wars. But they achieved few victories and subsequently settled into a kind of stalemate through the 19th century. During the height of the fighting, the Moro Wars netted hundreds of captives who were sold in the Manila slave market. Some of these men, once they forcibly accepted baptism, were taken to Mexico. Alright? They were taken to Mexico. Who? Moors. Muslim Moors. Okay? I want you guys to really understand what they're telling us here. Here we have a photo of the Aeta children of the Philippines, the Aeta tribe, A-E-T-A, in case you guys want to study them. And again, they try to say these people are African when you go into these mainstream narratives, right? Just because the way they look right here. But these, again, indigenous Filipinos, the Aeta, ancient and very ancient in this area. Philippines, no proof of them being from Africa. Stop making things up. Here we have a Polynesian girl, very rare picture I was able to find, colorized. Even where I got this photo in the website, it was like a blog saying that how you don't see this image of Polynesia anymore. Hard to find this type of people. Even on their website, they were saying it. And it was a black and white picture, and I was like, yeah, let me colorize this. And just look what we found here. Here we have a portrait of a Batak woman. Remember the Batak people? From 1870, northern Sumatra, Indonesia. Northern Sumatra, Indonesia. Alright? Northern Sumatra, Indonesia. Take a good look. And here we have a portrait of a girl from the Calanasan, Apayao, northern Luzon, Philippines region. As you guys can see, so swarthy. jurisdiction were enemies who could be enslaved as punishment for impeding the predication of the gospel. Okay? So they just enslaving all these people, anybody who's Muslim especially. There's a whole history again, they don't really teach us. These people again are being sent through a middle passage, right, in the Pacific Ocean over to the Americas and other Spanish colonies around the world. The border wars netted thousands of slaves for soldiers on the side of Spain, okay? Thousands of slaves from the Moors that they were grabbing here in Southeast Asia, as well as for the Muslim chiefdoms. In fact, much of the fighting consisted of skirmishes and coastal raiding by both parties. Slavery motivated Spanish soldiers and their Indian allies, who went into battle with the express purpose of acquiring slaves. Spanish sources suggest that soldiers enslaved more than 4,000 Muslims between 1599 and 1604 alone. Most of these captives were sold in the Manila slave market. Again, the Manila galleys were going to the Americas, guys. In the late 1630s, a Muslim chief from Manguindanao spoke of the danger of falling prey to Spanish soldiers and urged his followers to fight back. Don't you understand the subjection would reduce you to a toilsome slavery under the Spaniards? Turn your eyes to the defeated nations. Look at the Tagalogs and Visayas. Don't you see the Spaniards trample them? Don't you see that they are made to work every day at the oars and in the cultivations? Alright, in the what? In the plantations? Don't you see, guys? This call to action articulates the fear that drove the soldiers on both sides, partly for profit but also for defense. Muslim soldiers enslaved thousands of their opponents, one time carrying away 2,500 Christianized Indians. The captives taken by the Muslims were mainly used as agricultural workers or sold to foreign slave markets, such as in Dutch Batavia, present-day Jakarta, where officials from the Dutch East Indian Company acquired laborers for their spice plantations in the Maluku Islands. Here we have a portrait of two inhabitants of Flores, the Flores Islands, remember? The Maluku Indonesian archipelago, possibly from the Ikat village, Benguela, before 1938. Let's zoom in on these two gentlemen. Now look at them, alright? Very swarthy, look at their phenotypes, alright? So-called Chinos, right? They were bringing to the Americas. Here we have a portrait of two women from the west coast of Sumatra, West Sumatra, around 1880 to 1908. All right, two women from Sumatra. Look at them. Wow, and look at their gear. Again, when we talk about Star Wars, where they get the idea for Star Wars and all these clothing, these gears, these costumes in these movies. Look at that. Here we have a postcard depicting a Malay girl modeling the latest clothing design. National Archives of Singapore. Alright, a Malay girl modeling the latest clothing design. She's in fashion. Princess Tule of the Tonga, Fiji Island. Princess Tule of the Tonga, Fiji Island. And I saw that in a comment. Somebody said this is my great something grandmother, Princess Tule. So the information was there. I was able to copy that. And Fiji, you know, the Fiji Islanders, they rock the froze. That's part of their culture. Here we have a Raja of Silana, Rajput Silana. This is from India, Hindu. Alright, check him out. Yeah, look at him. Here we have another Hindu woman, Rajputi, that's her name, from 1865. Alright, very, very swarthy. Here we have a Rongan dancer, Betawi, previously Batavia. This is a Jakarta, Java. This is a Javanese dancer. Alright, we're Javanese servants or something. Look at that. Look how swarthy they are. Again, they don't show us Javanese like this today. Look at her. She looks like a princess. Governor Sebastian Hurtado de Corcuera led some of the more dramatic confrontations against the Muslims. In 1638, his men took hundreds of captives in Jolo. 192 of them were later sold at auction in Manila for a total of 20,815 silver pesos. Among the many captives was a child named Pedro de Mendoza. Listen to this, guys. Who years later sued for his freedom in Spain. He went all the way to Spain. That's where they had brought him, right? In 1655, he petitioned the Council of the Indies in Seville for his liberty, claiming that Corcuera had illegally enslaved him. Pedro said he was an Indian from the Philippines, not from America, and reminded the judges all Indians are naturally free, according to royal decree. In his defense, Corcuera explained that as governor, he had personally led troops into Mindanao and Jolo to vanquish Muslims. After a major battle in 1638, he had taken responsibility of more than 200 children, all under 4 years of age, whom the enemy had left behind. Corcuera had the children baptized and taken to Manila, where he distributed them among upstanding citizens to be raised as Christians. Alright, you hear that, guys? He also kept several of these children in his own household and then brought them to Spain. According to Corcuera, these individuals, including Pedro, were legal slaves because they had been captured in a just war against Muslims, and the enslavement of women and children in a just war was fully allowed under Spanish jurisprudence. Corcuera also claimed that Pedro de Mendoza's real name was Pedro Jolo. He was not an Indian, but a Muslim slave, with a brand on his face to prove it. To pressure the point, Corcuera presented the court with a copy of the royal decree from 1635 that had ordered him to punish the people of Mindanao and Jolo. It is not known whether Pedro regained his freedom, but his case certainly attests to the reach of the slaving campaigns of the Moors. Notably, several other captives from Corcuera expedition emerged in the historical record, including Salvador Sanchez from Mindanao, who was finally freed by the same soldiers who had captured him and taken him to Mexico City as his personal servant decades earlier. The slaving expeditions reached beyond the Philippines archipelago to places such as the Mariana Islands, then called Islas Chamorros or Islas de los Ladrones. Spanish soldiers claimed that Muslims made frequent forays there to capture the natives who died in their service. They had a better idea to capture the said natives before they fell into the enemy hands. The soldiers planned to have the captives baptized and then send them to Mexico to work in the mines for the greater service of God. In this petition to the king, the soldiers specifically linked the role of slavery in bringing unbelievers to Christianity and away from the Muslim chieftains. They requested license to carry out slaving raids by employing the major justification used to enslave people in other parts of the world, specifically West Africa. Alright, that's the hijack. Which ones? Show me the sources. This request, moreover, testifies to the slaving economy that developed as a result of the struggle between Christians and Muslims for political control of this remote part of the world. 3 unidentified Samoan girls wearing traditional Samoan clothing, a bit more zoomed in so you guys can see, get a good look at some Samoans, indigenous Samoans. Let me back up again. Samoans, huh? Some more Samoans, alright? Let me zoom in. Let me see. Alright, so Swarthy, so-called Negro, and your so-called Chinos. These are the people they were labeling Chinos. Here we have a Tingian woman from the Philippines. Philippines, just look at her, take a good look at her. Philippines, right? Filipino, indigenous Filipino. Here we have a Toda woman in India. A Toda woman from India, very swarthy. Look at her hair, very curly and wavy. Here we have a Toda woman from the Nilgiri Hills in India. Again, a Toda woman, Hindu woman from India. So swarthy. Tutsu Dos Bairagi people, Hindu religious mendicant from Allahabad, India. And look what he's doing. Let me show you. He got his feet up. Look how he's bent up. Who taught him that stuff? Check it out, guys. Hindu. Look at it, guys. This is an awesome picture right here. Look how he's bent. He ain't even feeling it. No sweat. Look how he's bent. And he got his arms folded like what? What? Here we have 2 children of the former Secretary of War, Hassan Pambina, Indonesia. Alright, Indonesian children. Look how beautiful they look. Look at this. Awesome pic. Alright. Here we have 2 women from Ambon City, the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. Alright, you see that? Your so-called Chinas. So swarthy. Maluku Islands, Indonesia. Indonesians, original Indonesians. Continuing the book, Asian slaves in colonial Mexico. Chinos. 200 pesos paid by a slave trader who turned around and sold Antonio in Mexico City for almost double the price. The surviving documentation that details Antonio's journey from Asia to Mexico reveals the many steps and intermediaries who were involved in the Trans-Pacific slave trade, as well as the profits that drove this commerce. From the late 1560s through the early 1700s, alright? That's a lot of years, guys. Individual traders brought slaves from the Philippines to Mexico aboard the ships of the Manila galleons. Remember, these are all kinds of Southeast Asians and Hindus and all that are being sent to the Manila or the Philippine slave market to be transported from there to the Americas, okay? This chapter examines the Trans-Pacific trade during a key period of transition for the larger slave trade of Spanish America, when slavers dealt in people from Asia and Africa, so-called Africa, right? The slaves who crossed the Pacific were part of much larger influx of slaves to Spanish America, much larger. As such, their story must be examined in the context of Spain's effort, beginning in the 16th century, to supply the colonies with slave labor. The Wayang, Orang, and Java. These are Javanese. This is a theater performance, I believe. A lot of theater stuff here coming out of Java. I guess they were into that a lot. As you guys can see, all these people swarthy complexion, right? Here we have women from Ambon Island, the Ambon Island, Indonesia, Ambon. So-called Negro people as well, very swarthy. Again, these are your so-called Chinos, Chinas they were bringing over to the Americas, Ambon Islanders. Here we have Filipino Negritos, the Porag region, they said, from the Philippines. Here we have a young man from Java, or Javanese, Batavia, Jakarta, it's called today South Pacific. Very swarthy young fellow, Javanese, as you guys can see, very swarthy, Javanese. Here we have two girls from the Tonga, I believe that was the Samoan or Fiji Islands. As you guys can see, so swarthy. Look at their hair, their traditional clothing. Here we have a Samoan woman, and look at the leaves on her clothing and stuff. When I colorized it, I was like, wow, really cool, really cool. Alright, Samoan, right? Samoan, what you're talking about, the rock. Here we have Sinhalese women, Ceylon, Sinhalese Ceylon. Alright, Sri Lanka. Here we go to zoom in. Alright, look at her here to the left. Look at her all the way here to the left, the middle. See their phenotypes? And again, it looks like people I've seen in the Americas, guys. Just my opinion. Ceylon, Sinhalese, original, indigenous Sinhalese women. Here we have a Singpho woman, warlike frontier tribe on Laos, southern frontier of Assam. Southern frontier of Assam. This is from India. This is from India, a Hindu woman. India. Look at that. Here I have Southeast Asian children, not sure what country, but it was in this website where it said Southeast Asians, and they got almost like their Muslim gear, right? Like their Muslim gear on, as you guys can see, so swarthy. I mean, not from Africa, no African ancestry. These are indigenous Southeast Asians, okay, guys? Here we have an old photo of the Tufi warriors from pre-1920 with shields, and it's colorized here for you guys. Look at this. So, Tufi warriors, Southeast Asians, I believe this is in Papua New Guinea or New Caledonians. Papua New Guinea, I believe so, actually more. Yeah, Tufi warriors, look at that. Alright, so-called Negroes. And again, they don't show us none of these pictures growing up. They just wanted us to picture Asians in a certain way. But I want you guys from now on, when you picture Asia, picture this. This is Asia. Alright, so I just wanted to show this to you guys. It says here the Manila Galleon journey east. And you see from the Philippines, again, another middle passage. This is the Trans-Pacific slave trade. Yeah, and you can see that it was going over to, at times, to California. Alright, so I was showing you earlier in Acapulco, a tourist destination today, but it was a slave market, you know, back in the 1500s, 1600s, for all these people in Southeast Asia. It says here the galleon was part of an empire-wide system of royally sponsored navigation routes or runs, carreras, which aim to regulate trade flows and also protect ships from pirates. In this capacity, the Manila Galleon was sometimes referred to as the Eastern Islands Run. Canera de las Islas del Poniente. On the way to Mexico, the ships carried bales of Chinese silks and Indian cottons, porcelain, spices, and wax. They returned laden with silver. As a royal route, there were restrictions on the volume of the ship's cargo, known as the permiso. The enforcement of these cargo restrictions, however, was not notoriously slack, and it was common for galleons to carry merchandise worth 4 times the official allowance. Despite the dangers of overloading, merchants and officials connived to falsify ship registries and embark with as much merchandise as possible on sealed crates, tinajas. One Spaniard threatened before the 1620 voyage to Mexico that he would stab any passenger found opening his crates, even if his name was Christ. Generalized fraud was commonplace throughout the galleon's history. Right here we have some children, more children, in their tribal dress from Indonesia. Indonesia, in their tribal dress from Indonesia. You see her, what she looked like? Look at the gear they got on, especially her. Look at her, she's, wow. I mean, just look at the clothing, their styles, the art, the designs on their clothes. Okay? Again, some children from Indonesia. And right here we have a coolie family in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad, a coolie family. So Hindus that were brought over to South America. Alright? This is them. This was them in Trinidad. It says a family in the Coolie village, Trinidad. The Coolie village in Trinidad. You guys know the history. You guys know what I'm talking about. Some more people from New Caledonia. And like I said, you know, and again, these people do not trace back to Africa. Novo Caledonia. Alright? Kanakis. Kanakis, these are the indigenous people. The Kanakis. Okay, this is Malays. These are some Malays, I believe. Yeah, these are from Malaysia. Again, Southeast Asians. This is a more modern picture. It's from the 1900s, I believe. So they still look like that there. This is a young Hindu woman from Bombay, 1865. 1865, a Hindu. These are the slaves that they were bringing, the Moors that they were bringing from Asia. The passage across the Pacific from Manila to Acapulco was extremely long and dangerous. The ships had to navigate against major currents with only the assistance of wind and rowing power. The trip from Manila to Acapulco could take up to 6 months, exposing the ships to endless storms and inclement weather. The Italian traveler Giovanni Gemelli Carreri wrote vividly about his tedious and dreadful voyage in 1696. There was hunger, thirst, sickness, cold, continued watching, and other sufferings, besides the terrible shocks from side to side caused by the furious beating of the waves. To add to the miseries, the ship swarmed with little vermin of sundry colors, so the passengers were never clear of an universal itch. There was nothing to do day after day except keep clear of the currents of water that poured over every inch of the ship. Gemelli may have bitterly complained, but he was a cabin passenger, which meant that he had a place to hide away from the general squalor of the ship. He also had a slave who cooked his food and tended more generally to his comfort. The conditions endured by Gemelli's slave and the rest are almost unimaginable. Okay? Unimaginable. Middle passage here, guys, that they never tell us about. Hernando de los Rios Coronel wrote numerous reports over his many years as Attorney General, Procurador General of the Spanish Philippines about the workings of the Manila galleon, and the transport of slaves was a regular concern. In 1605, he reported of the many offenses to God that took place on generalized outrage among his fellow passengers. The king was incensed. The trafficking of female slaves was an affront to God that required an urgent response. In 1608, he ordered officials in Manila to prevent any female slaves from boarding the ships. Noting that the voyage was long and dangerous, the king also commanded that all female passengers had to be married to ensure their protection. As with other prohibitions, however, the barring of women from the Manila galleons was wholly ignored, so that approximately 1/4 of the slaves who crossed the Pacific were women. In 1620, the king noted with concern that female slaves were still making the journey across the Pacific, even though it was expressly forbidden. Accordingly, he ordered the judges of the Audiencia of Manila, the High Court, to pay particular care at the time of departure to ensure that such slaves were not hidden on board the ships. The concern with the trans-Pacific trade extended beyond morality. Coronel also reported on the overcrowding of the galleon with the male slaves, who ate all the provisions, stole from the passengers, and generally added to the ship's unsanitary conditions. This is a man from Papua New Guinea. Alright? Papua New Guinea, again, Southeast Asia, and this person does not trace back to Africa. And again, it's weird because the Khoisan look more Asian than him, right? The Khoisan are lighter than him, and they look way more Asian than him, but they're African. They're one of the oldest Africans. So that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. We gotta stop basing what we think of people based only on looks. Yeah, they might, help out in a big way most of the time, but we may be wrong a lot of the time. This is a Hindu man. This is an Indian Hindu, right, who was in the West Indies. And look what he has, dreadlocks. And I noticed that a lot of these Hindus they were bringing had a lot of dreadlocks. Remember, this is from the 1800s. This is way before the whole Rastafari movement. So where did these Rastafaris really get the dreadlock idea from? Even though we know we've seen the murals in Mexico, we've seen the Mayas, we've seen a lot of these, depicting people with, dreadlocks. All right, so we know that's old. So again, I'm asking the same question because we know we had Mayas with dreadlocks and we have Hindus with dreadlocks. So where did the Rastafaris really get the idea for dreadlocks and all that? Because Hindus were doing it for ages and the Mayas were doing it too. It's not an African thing only. This is a Hindu woman. As you see in the bottom, it says East Indian woman in Chow, Trinidad, British West Indies. She's from Trinidad, but she's a Hindu. Alright, again, the book told us they were bringing the slaves from where? From the Indian subcontinent in Southeast Asia. This is a Tamil girl, Ceylon, Sri Lanka. She is from Sri Lanka. Look at that. She's from Sri Lanka, from Ceylon. Her clan or tribe is the Tamil people of Sri Lanka. The Manila galleon's high mortality provides some sense of the discomforts and very real dangers of the crossing. The ships were filled with cargo, so that even the decks teetered with crates, leaving little room for the common sailor and slaves to sleep or seek shelter from the rain. It was said that common sailors were not even given clothes to protect them against the cold during the nights, so there were usually 3 or 4 deaths with each new dawn. You hear what's going on in this middle passage, guys? This ain't no Kunta Kinte story. This is real history. As an example, in 1629, the one ship that sailed experienced a loss of 100 people. 100 people died on the way, and I'm showing you these pictures, guys. These are the people, these are so-called Black Asiatics. Many of their bodies were actually kept on board until they arrived in Acapulco, adding to the ship's insalubrious conditions. The bodies of the dead remained on the ship so that they could be taken to sanctified ground for proper burial as dictated by custom. The parish in Acapulco even had set price scale for burials at arrival. 10 pesos ships first sighted land off the coast of California, where they traded with local peoples for fresh food, alright? Where? Cali. Where they bringing these people first? Cali. They traded with local peoples for fresh food to combat the scurvy and Betty that often ravaged the passengers. From there, the ships followed the coast southward, making additional stopovers before finally reaching their official destination. These stops were only intended to take on emergency provisions and to send messengers ahead to notify officials in Acapulco and Mexico City to their impending arrival. News of the galleon caused great excitement in Mexico City. A contemporary reported that the announcement on February 21st, 1650 was celebrated with cathedral bell tolls, and again on March 2nd when the ship was sighted from Acapulco. However, brief, the coastal stops provided opportunities for some illegal unloading of goods, which further suggests that the volume of the slave trade was higher than what was noted in the official registries. Guys, I'm going to read that again because they try to, sugarcoat this. They're telling you right here they couldn't keep track. They stopped everywhere along the coast to do illegal unloading, right, of slaves, which further suggests again that the volume of the slave trade was higher than what was noted in the official registries, and that was told to us in our elementary schools and what was told to us in our education system. It was a lot higher. Okay, guys? Her, she's a Malaysian. People, brothers and sisters. But yeah, she's a Malaysian, Southeast Asian. This is another Tamil woman. I didn't colorize this one, it was already colorized. Tamil woman from Sri Lanka. Alright? Again, this is the original people in these areas. And we have a statue of Buddha from Thailand here. A statue of Buddha from Thailand. As you can see, the hair from Thailand, 800 AD. And honestly, some of these look like the Dinka people in Africa. So where do they really originate? A lot of the tribes in Africa, again, don't originate in Africa. They're coming from Asia, they're coming from the Middle East, so-called, Arabia, all these other places. A lot of them coming from Europe, some of them coming from America, ancient America. A lot of their stories speak of it, of their migration, their past, and how they got to where they are today. Just go do the research. This is a portrait of a Bayadir Devadasi temple dancer from 1857. Again, she's a Hindu. This is from India. This is a Hindu. The Indian subcontinent, that's what the book told us. They were bringing these so-called Asian slaves. The Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia, not China. Alright? This is what a Southeast Asian or Indian subcontinent person or woman looked like, especially back in the 1500s, 1600s. Remember, these pictures are from the 1800s because that's when camera was invented. Now imagine 200-300 years before that, before people started, or the ethnic cleansing began. That's some more here, Black Buddha and the Israelite Buddhists. It says in this article, we will identify the Buddha and early Buddhists as descendants of the Hebrew Israelites. Uh-oh. Is that a future video? Who's the Buddha? Who's Quetzalcoatl? Who's Guatemala? Who's Guatemala Buddha? Who's Guatemala? What's Buddha's mom's name? Maya. Did you know that? Buddha's mom's name is Maya. And his first name is Guatemala. This is a Nagpur, an Indian, a Hindu woman, a Samoan woman. Alright, Samoan woman. The correspondence related to the death of hundreds of passengers of the voyage to Mexico in 1620 sheds light on how the illegal boarding of slaves in Manila took place. That year, the Viceroy of Mexico reported to the king that 330 people on board the San Nicolas had perished bags, throw it away.